Hey, this is Mr. Peterson. This screencast is about Charles Darwin and his voyage and some of the ideas he discovered while he was on a trip. So he was on the HMS Beagle, so this huge, humongous sailing ship. Actually, it was pretty small. It was about 90 feet long, so 90 feet, that's the distance on a baseball diamond from home plate to first base. That's all the longer this ship was. So he bobbed across the ocean on this ship, traveled around South America, went to the Galapagos Islands. On 5 years, he didn't like sailing at all. Got often seasick, but was an amazing trooper through the whole thing. Kind of stumbled on it. Darwin his idea initially was to be a minister. Anyway, so he leaves Great Britain, heads to South America, goes around South America, travels along the coastline, maps stuff, collects all kinds of samples. I mean, thousands and thousands of samples, many of which you can still see today at places and museums across the globe. And while he's doing that, he's taking copious notes, making great observations of things. Winds up in the Galapagos Islands off the coast of Ecuador, and really kind of stumbles upon all kinds of amazing life. So this chain of islands, hundreds of miles off the coast of South America, pretty close to the equator, and really spends a great deal of time and learns about some stuff called biogeography. That's not what he called it at that time, but that's what we call it today. We'll eventually get to another cat, a guy by the name of Alfred Russel Wallace, that was a contemporary of Darwin, so middle 19th century, but he was in a different part of the planet. So Alfred Russel Wallace traveled over into the Malay archipelago on the other side of the planet and pretty much came to the same kind of ideas of evolution as Charles Darwin. We'll get to what Darwin did to kind of beat Russell to the punch as far as publication a few years later, so after his voyage. So what is biogeography? It's variation based on a location. So he heads to the Galapagos, and you've seen probably pictures of these. Maybe you've actually seen Galapagos turtles. So every island had its own variety of tortoise, and based on their food and their habitat. So what did they eat, and where did they live? So each of those islands had their own different species. He kind of was like, why aren't these all the same? But they certainly were not. They were all very different. And then he also studied finches, so birds. And he discovered that, first he didn't think they were all the same. He didn't think they were all finches. He thought they were all kinds of different birds. But he showed them to a naturalist back in Great Britain, and they're like, these are all finches. And the difference between them was basically their food source, which was related to their beak. So we'll get to an activity related to that. So here's a finch that needed a big, strong beak because it ate really hard seeds. So it needed a big chisel to get through the seeds. He also, you have to think about the time. What was the 19th century world like? Most people believed that the planet was pretty much the same as it always had been. And with the discovery of fossils, people really kind of scratched their heads. And he found some amazing fossils. So these are glyptodonts, about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle. But they're pretty similar to some organisms that we have today. So they're pretty similar to armadillos. And so Darwin made the connection between these fossil organisms and organisms that are around today. And he had to try to explain that. And the idea of extinction was unheard of. We have to put it in the context of God's creation. Why would God make things go away? And Darwin eventually came to the idea that they weren't fit. They didn't belong. They couldn't survive anymore. And the idea of a relatively young Earth. So most people in Darwin's time thought 7,000 years, 5,600 years, 6,000 years old. That's how they. And Darwin's like, well, I don't know. I found some evidence that the planet is much older than that. Why the heck is he finding trilobites, which are a sea fossil, up in the mountains? And also, one of the things that Darwin observed was he observed an earthquake, and he saw the seafloor along the ocean shift up. So there was some tectonic activity that he observed on his voyage. And so his voyage was filled with biology, biogeography, geology, and really trying to put together how the planet works. And so his 5-year voyage of discovery was that 5 years of amazing discovery, from biology to geology and the business of biogeography, new ideas. So his pretty crazy riding on a 90-foot boat for 5 years. He was seasick a lot, not crazy about the trip, but was instrumental in coming up with maybe one of the best ideas ever. Hope that helps.